Part of the beauty of Holy Week is seeing so many different themes coming together as we celebrate the accomplishment of our salvation in the sufferings and death and resurrection of Jesus. For example, on Holy Thursday, we have three major themes. We celebrate Jesus giving us himself in the signs of bread and wine. We see him telling his disciples to do the same, and so we think about the institution of the priesthood. And perhaps most significantly, we think about the example of service that Jesus gave us, calling us to love and serve each other. Those three themes of the Eucharist, priesthood, and service are all in the Holy Thursday liturgy, but probably most of us, when we think of Holy Thursday, think of Jesus giving us his body and blood in the Eucharist. Because of what he did at the Last Supper, we come together on the Lord's Day to celebrate the Eucharist. It's the one action that we do as religious people most often, and it's the action that really defines us as Catholic Christians. But it's interesting that John in his Gospel and the Church in choosing the readings for Holy Thursday have a different emphasis. John, of the four Gospel writers, has the longest account of the Last Supper. He devotes 5 complete chapters of his Gospel to Jesus with his disciples at the Last Supper. Most of that is a long instruction to his disciples after Judas leaves to betray him. But it's interesting that in those 5 chapters, Jesus doesn't mention Jesus picking up the bread and the wine and saying, "This is my body, this is my blood." Instead, Jesus, according to John, just gets up in the middle of the meal, puts a towel around his waist, and washes the feet of his disciples. I have always appreciated that very concrete example of the washing of the feet. I think it helps us to focus on and to really understand the central message that Jesus is leaving us. The Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ, is certainly the center of our religious belief, our theology. Jesus gives himself to us under the signs of bread and wine. It's very, very important. And so Jesus said, "Do this in remembrance of me." And the Church feels that it's so important that they have made a law that we must go to Mass every Sunday. All this is good. The Eucharist is the center of our faith. It's God's great sign of love for us. But it's a passive sign. Yes, we have to get ourselves to church on the weekend. But once we get there, we can basically sit there and do nothing and feel good about it. We can think, "Oh, I'm at church, I'm a good Catholic, I'm a good Christian." Unfortunately, through the centuries, we've lost some of the challenge, the excitement, the fire of being a disciple of Jesus. We've made it too easy to forget what Jesus asks us to do, commanded us to do, to care for each other, to help the poor, to eliminate injustice. That's why I really like the washing of the feet. I'm sorry we can't do it this year. It's something very real that we can do just like Jesus did. Jesus tells us to care for the sick and the grieving, but we can't heal sick people as he healed the daughter of the centurion. And we can't raise the dead to life as he did for the widow's son. But we can wash each other's feet. Probably we're not going to do that literally, but we can get our hands dirty, helping the homeless, feeding the hungry, maybe driving a sick person to the doctor, maybe cleaning the house of an elderly person. Each of those actions and so many others can be a sign of the love of God, an imitation of the actions of Jesus. And when we do that, Truly, we are following Jesus as he tells us, "Do this in remembrance of me."